Hi, I'm Michael Claridge.
And I'm Brian Nettles. Welcome to the Book of Mormon Heartland podcast.
Our aim is to validate the historicity of the Book of Mormon through language, artifact, historical, and scriptural research.
We believe the Lamanites are the Native American Indians living in North America, and it is our desire to let the voices of their ancestors come out from the dust.
Welcome to our podcast.
So, Michael, what'd you think about that interview with John Lefgren?
It was great. It was really great. But before we get into it, don't you think we should lay some groundwork?
Yeah, some groundwork like what the Book of Mormon says about the boat. And this is what it says in 1 Nephi chapter 17, verse 7. And it came to pass that after I, Nephi, had been in the land of Bountiful for the space of many days, the voice of the Lord came unto me, saying, Arise, and get thee into the mountain. And it came to pass that I arose and went up into the mountain, and cried unto the Lord. And it came to pass that the Lord spake unto me, saying, Thou shalt construct a ship, after the manner which I shall show thee, that I may carry thy people across these waters. And then there's this missing verse. And I said, Lord, whither shall I go, that I may find ore to molten, that I may make tools to construct the ship after the manner which thou hast shown unto me? And it came to pass that the Lord told me whither I should go to find ore, that I might make tools.
So tell me about this missing verse.
Missing verse. Yeah, I mean, it's not in the Book of Mormon, so it's really missing, but I think it's a missing verse because look at that. He's talking about how it's being revealed to him. The Lord spake unto me, saying, Thou shalt construct a ship after the manner which I shall show thee. And then he goes into making tools.
So right there, the Lord was telling him, these are the things you need to do.
Yeah, he kind of completely skipped over the concept of how you're going to build the ship. Now, I don't know about you, Michael. When I get revelations from the Lord, typically it's like one-liners, like one sentence or a few words are given to me as an impression to the Spirit.
Obviously, Nephi was having a conversation with the Lord.
A conversation, like a full-blown back and forth.
Back and forth.
Like he's speaking to God and God is speaking to man. Have you ever had that kind of conversation with God?
I'm working on it.
You're working on it. Okay. You're better than me. I need to work on that better, I would say. I think that's pretty incredible for Nephi to have a conversation with the Lord like that, to teach him how to build a ship. There's a little bit more information in here. Why don't you read this, Michael?
Now, this is from chapter 18, verse 2. Now I, Nephi, did not work the timbers after the manner which was learned by men, neither did I build the ship after the manner of men, but I did build it after the manner which the Lord had shown unto me. Wherefore it was not after the manner of men. And I, Nephi, did go into the mount oft, and did pray oft unto the Lord. Wherefore the Lord showed unto me great things. And it came to pass that after I had finished the ship, according to the word of the Lord, my brethren beheld it, that it was good, and that the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine. Wherefore they did humble themselves again before the Lord. Well, here we see that he went into the mount often, and he had conversations with the Lord.
Yeah.
And the Lord showed him many great things.
So it wasn't all given to him at once. It was a little bit more like, okay, here's what you need to know now. Now go build it. And then he'd go up into the mountain and he'd get more instruction of what he needed to do next.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. Now, I think it's also important to point out that this boat that he built, or that they built, was not after the manner of men. The boat that we're going to talk about with John Lefgren is not the same style of boat that the Phoenicians built, but it's still like a small to medium-sized watercraft. It's still going to be subject to the forces of wind and the forces of currents, just like a Phoenician boat would be. So let's get to John Lefgren's interview. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Nettles. I'm here with Michael Claridge, and I'm also here with John Lefgren. John Lefgren is the president of the Heartland Research Group. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing great.
Great. And thank you for coming on to the podcast today. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about the routes of Lehi. It's been a little while now. I think it's been about 6 months or so when Rick Bennett did the interview with Philip Beale.
A year and 3 months.
Has it been that long?
Yep. We've learned a lot, too. We've learned a lot.
Learned a lot. Great. So you know Philip Beale, right, John?
Very well. A dear friend, perfect gentleman.
How long have you known Philip?
I've known him for now 3 years.
Okay.
I bought the ship from him.
You bought the ship from Philip Beale. Okay.
Yes, sir. Heartland Research bought the ship.
So we'll get into the ship in a little bit, but first of all, we want to talk a little bit about, okay, so in the Book of Mormon, there were two primary migrations that are recorded. There's actually three. There's the one with the Jaredites, but we're not going to be talking about the Jaredites today, but we're going to be talking about Lehi and about their travels. And most people that are knowledgeable of the Book of Mormon generally accept where Bountiful was, where they left to cross the ocean from. And in fact, there is another resource I would recommend that you go to if you want to know how Lehi got from Jerusalem to this area. And that basically is Book of Mormon Central. They've done a lot of work on tracing the travels of Lehi and his family. And they basically generally believe that they came down to this area by Yemen and Oman, and they established themselves there. And it was from there that they built the boat that they used to cross the ocean to get to America. And the interesting thing has to do with Philip Beale, because Philip Beale also did an ocean crossing, and he also did a circumnavigation of Africa from this general place. Now, John, do you want to take over and you want to start talking about what Philip Beale did on his navigation of Africa?
I do. I want to talk about 3 ideas.
Okay.
Let me try to present 3 ideas. Just 3 ideas, and that'll be it.
What's up?
The wind, the current, and the desert. So you see Jerusalem?
I see it now. Okay, so this is the travel of Lehi and his family.
This is 8 years in the desert.
Okay.
They end up on Bountiful, okay?
Okay.
Now, here is the story. You have currents and you have winds. This is a square rig, single cell, ancient ship. It's going to be greatly affected by the currents.
And this is the boat of Philip Beale that you're talking about.
So the 20% of the ship's energy is set by the currents. The currents are well known and well studied. Okay.
Okay.
We have this path down here on the east side of Africa, going through Madagascar.
Okay. And this is Philip Beale's plan. This is Philip Beale's plan, or you're just talking about the currents right now?
Let me try to make this clear. So the ship has a square sail, and the sail will be able to take the winds as the winds carry it. And we'll see that the winds will affect about 80% of the ship's energy, whereas the currents have 20%.
Okay.
And that's how the ship moves. The ship is 50 tons. And it's subject to the wind and it's subject to the currents. It's very hard to go against prevailing currents and winds.
Okay.
So the sail fills up with wind and it moves, right?
Yes.
And the current, of course, has its own effect. And so if you kind of say, all right, 80% of the energy in the ship that's causing its motion is determined by the wind, and 20% is determined by the currents. That then sort of sets your course. You go into the currents and you take the winds when they come in the fall from Africa.
Yeah, so the currents just kind of boost you a little bit. You don't really have to follow the currents.
Well, the currents. No, I mean the currents will give you. Let's say you got 100%. If you take the ship has to have energy to move.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're in the doldrums or you're someplace else. You have to have something that moves the ship. 20% of that movement will be affected by the current because of the square single cell configuration of this ancient ship. The other 80% will be set by the winds.
Okay.
So you have then two forces that are acting on the ship. You have the winds and you have the currents. Got it?
Yeah.
These are prevailing winds and these are currents that are in the ocean, and they sort of churn things up. Temperatures change, of course. I think for us, probably the most famous current is the Atlantic current going up into northern Europe.
Okay.
That keeps all of Sweden and those Scandinavian countries warm. You see where we are right up here.
Yeah.
This is Bountiful, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have right here's Bountiful.
Yeah, right there.
We've got the Arabia Peninsula. This is an important current that brings you down on the east side of Africa. The area here is really difficult because you've got two oceans that are sort of mixing.
Yes.
The Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. Some of the roughest seas anywhere in the world are right down in here. This is where you have storms and you have great difficulty steering the ship. You just ride down this current and the prevailing winds are going to take you there in the fall. So it's not a hard thing once you get into the forces that are moving you.
Yeah.
So he's coming off here. They catch the current and they come down the east side of Africa. And now they're going to come down. This is Africa. They're going to come and they're going to pick up these winds as well as the currents.
Yeah.
We have this is the path that the Phoenicia took. It's remarkable in its detail and pattern.
Okay, so they started in the Red Sea.
They start in the Red Sea. They go up here. He goes right to Bountiful.
And that's interesting that he chose that place. Why did he choose that place? Does he ever talk about that?
Well, of course. It's the wind and the currents.
Okay.
He's going to pick up a ride. He's got to get around Africa.
So he knew this from studying the winds and the currents, and so he chose that spot, which happens to be the exact location that Nephi and Lehi went to.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
That's amazing.
Well, it is. I mean, he has a problem down in here with the Somalia pirates, you know. He goes way out to sea.
Yeah.
And so he's got to have that awareness. The shipping lines tend to move in these currents. They're big ships, and they would crush him if they hit him. So he's got Somalia pirates and shipping large container ships.
Yeah.
He's got to keep away from that. Every day he's connected with the sea reports coming out of Britain.
Yeah. And on this mission, his mission is to circumnavigate Africa.
Exactly. 600 BC, Nico II commissions the Phoenician sailors to go around Africa. That is written in the early history of the Greeks. About 200 years later, the circumnavigation of Africa is a matter of historic record. He was trying to show that indeed was possible.
So this is, just to recap what you just said. So in 600 BC, the Egyptian pharaoh Necho commissioned the Phoenicians.
Necho II
commissioned the Phoenicians to build a boat or use one of their boats, and circumnavigate Africa just to show that they could do it?
Well, Nico was trying to build a canal. He started on a Suez Canal right in here. See that?
Yes.
He was a very ambitious ruler, and he'll end up in a bad place when he loses to Nebuchadnezzar in the. Herodotus was the first historian, the first Greek historian.
Yes.
He wrote about it. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of speculation about whether or not that would have been possible, although it is part of the historic record.
But Herodotus is the primary source as to why we know that this took place.
Well, Herodotus writes about 200 years after Nico II. And I think that's the earliest source that we're able to point to.
Okay. It was simply a circumnavigation of Africa. There's no talk about America or anything like that in it.
No, none. There was just talk about Africa, going around Africa, circumnavigation.
According to Herodotus' record, what he recorded was that the circumnavigation took place. It was successful.
Might have been. I mean, they went on shore to get water and food.
Yeah.
But they came back.
On the other side of the Suez Canal is where they ended up.
Yes, right in Alexandria.
Right there. Okay. And so why does this line look different than simply circumnavigating Africa? Because that's what Philip Beale wanted to do. He just wanted to go around Africa, and I know that he went more distant from the land.
I mean, in my interpretation, no, this is the way it is. I mean, you have to take nature as it comes to you.
Yes.
And the winds blow and the water flows.
Yes.
And the problem for anybody on the open seas is to try to understand how to be in the prevailing winds and how to use the currents to your advantage.
Yes.
You can't go contrary.
Yeah.
So let's just try to develop this. So the currents are going to account for about 20% of the ship's energy. When I say energy, that is, the currents will affect about, you've got 50 tons. You got what, 15, 20, 30 people on board, and you're in the open water.
Yeah.
And the way the water moves is pretty regular in terms of its currents. So he's going to pick this thing up here, coming down the east side of Africa.
Okay.
All right. That's in the current. Now,
yes.
The wind will come around here. This is Africa, and you see these prevailing winds?
Yes. And we're focusing on the July map here.
The winds do change from January to July, but that change is not so dramatic. These doldrums are right in here. Okay. See how the winds are coming up here on this side?
Yeah, pushing you to the land.
Yeah, but then once you get up into here, you get the northeast trades. And then that starts pulling you over to the Caribbean. See that?
Yeah.
So you get this ancient ship following literally the winds, or greatly affected by the winds. The winds give 80% of the energy for the ship. The ship has to move, rather the ship moves because of the energy from the wind and from the currents. But you can see how there is a little bit of a transition here.
Yeah.
They call them the doldrums. So the prevailing winds are coming up this way from Africa. He's made it around. He catches these winds. He gets through the doldrums, and then he picks up those northeastern, they call northeast trades.
Yeah.
See how that swings there?
Yes.
And it swings towards America and to the Caribbean.
So that's what Philip Beale experienced, is that right
you
there.
See it right here.
So he ended up
So
being pushed.
he's got 74 days here. This is a very accurate map. He has his GPS on all the time, and he's reporting every day in his ship log. And we have every day we know where this ship is.
Yeah.
He fights. He's pulled into. He goes within 40 miles of America.
400 miles.
I'm sorry. Yes, 400 miles of America. So on June 12th, 2010, it's the most westerly point of his expedition right here.
Yeah.
He's got to get that ship going back to the Straits of Gibraltar. And he does that by
currents and wind. Currents and wind, right?
Well, currents and wind, but you see here, these winds are taking him into the into America.
Yes.
And these other winds are going to come back here. He's going to have to pick these up here and come back into the Straits of Gibraltar.
So what about Lehi, though? He would have.
Well, Lehi would have just sailed right into the Caribbean or into Florida. Easy. You have to fight through here, and then you got to turn your ship around. He was trying to go around Africa, the same way that the Phoenicians did in 600 BC.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So when did he leave Bountiful? He left Bountiful October 26, 2009. He's going to be sailing in the autumn and into the winter.
He had no Book of Mormon interpretation.
Well, I know.
He was going to pick up the currents and the winds, and this is where he's going to take off.
So he's leaving in the fall.
It's in the fall.
And when he gets to the Horn of Africa, it's spring. Okay, it's March. And now
it's March, and this is for sure the most difficult part of the trip.
Yes, and so now between March and June, so he's arriving into the Caribbean in the summertime of June.
Yep, he's in the wrong place as far as he's concerned because he's trying to go around Africa. This becomes problematic. So this is the challenge of the captain. He's got to turn that ship around. He's got a square sail. He can't track that easily. When you track a ship, you're going sort of against the winds.
Yeah.
A square sail doesn't allow you to do that. It's not designed for that. And so he's got to figure out how to. You can see it here. This is the point where he is making his turn. And then, you put the sail up, you try, of course, you've got the rudder, you've got other ways of moving the ship. But
go back to your wind chart. Okay, so in July, so he's still going against the wind. Well, he's still going against the wind. He goes way up north. He goes up to a point.
So he's in these winds here that are coming into the Caribbean. He's got to get this thing turned around, and then he'll pick up some chance. Yeah, he's got the doldrums too.
Well, up north, there's more doldrums up north. I mean, the dots are indicating to me that it's calmer winds.
Yeah. Well, it can be just simply quiet.
Okay. Yeah, all right. He was able to get it back to Africa in very difficult circumstances, it looks like.
That was hard for him. I think it was unexpectedly hard.
Yeah.
So the natural path would have been right into the Caribbean, right into Florida.
Right into the Caribbean and then into Florida. Okay. So if that's the route that Lehi took, it looks like...
Well, I don't think there's any question. Now, he's looked at other possible routes, and other people have different theories. But it's one thing to have a theory. It's another thing to be on the ocean for 700 days and travel 30,000 miles.
Yeah.
There's nobody else in the world that can do what Philip Beale did.
Now, the interesting thing to me, if we get back to the story of Lehi, I always thought that he would have gone across the Pacific Ocean. But actually, It does.
So
Yeah.
there are people that have that view, and Philip Beale has looked at that carefully
Yeah.
and has had discussions with those people. He thinks that it's impossible. You'd pull yourself down into what he calls the roaring 40s, which are down in the New Zealand area, or then you might be able to go up around Japan. But to do a trans-Pacific crossing to America in a ship of that type would have been, the ship might have made it, but the crew would not have.
Okay. They would not have made it. So that kind of blows the theory that I had when I was younger. I always thought that, why would he go around Africa? The direct water route would be across the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, but that's a long ways.
So what's neat about this story is that there's not a mile in this 10,000. No, it's actually a 20,000 mile journey. There's not 1 mile that we don't have detailed logs on. We know where he is. We know what the wind is doing. We know what the currents are doing.
Yeah.
And we have, of course, the experience of thousands of ships, and what he did, other people are familiar with. They know the currents and they know the wind.
So this is really the reason why a lot of Heartlanders, such as yourself and myself, believe that he landed in Florida, because it's just the natural
I think
course.
the bountiful starting point is really, really nicely documented.
Yes.
And this Indian Ocean, and there are, of course, there's the monsoon, there are the winds, there's the currents. I think so. If you're at Bountiful and you want to get to Florida, and you have an ancient ship, I don't think there's any other path.
Okay, that's great.
So this is the ship that Philip Beale was captain of. He built this ship.
And this ship is a replica of a 600 BC Phoenician ship.
It is indeed very faithfully put together. And this ship, the ancient qualities of this ship are incredible. So here is a picture of the ship as it is today in Montrose. We have, when it's fully assembled, it'll weigh in at about 50 tons.
Okay.
This here represents maybe 15 tons. We've got the pieces, all the pieces except for the deck. We don't have the mast. We don't have all that. So I would say 10 tons, 15 tons, we have to rebuild. Every piece in this ship here has traveled 30,000 nautical miles under the command of Philip Beale.
Okay.
Remarkable.
So the Phoenicians would have used a ship similar to that. Okay.
No, it's similar seems too weak to me. This is the ship.
Oh, that's the original one.
This is the original. This is the 2,600-year-old ship in Marseille, France, coming out of the mud. This is a low oxygen mud. These timbers are ancient, and they allow us. Here it is on display. The public can go there and see it. The timbers allowed Philip Beale to reconstruct in exactness, with great detail, his ship.
Well, that's a young Philip Beale there.
No, these are shipbuilders in Syria. Here is the hull. They built the hull first. Here's the ship getting ready to make its. This is the ship in Carthage. Here's Philip Beale. This is the remarkable engineering of the ship. There are 10,000 of these joints.
Okay.
It's a secret of the whole ship, because it gives the ship. We have two concepts in design that are sort of in conflict. One is flexible, the other is strong. And the joints give the flexibility, and the timbers give the strength. And when a 50, 60-ton wave comes up and hits the side of the ship's got to give, otherwise it'll break into pieces.
Yeah.
That here we are in Montrose putting it together, and on it goes. This is the great time of turmoil and conflict. From you can see the lion representing Judah, and then the Babylonians.
Okay.
Original to the time. I hope that's helpful.
It is.
Thank you, John.
I thank you. This is very exciting stuff. I want to be as clear as I can possibly be. And it's useful for all of us to talk about these things because they are really important. Really important.
Okay. Well, thanks, John, and we'll pick up again in a later time.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Boy, I thought that interview was great.
Great interview.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to point out was that when Rick Bennett interviewed Philip Beale, Rick Bennett pressed Philip Beale on a couple of questions. And he said to him, aside from Florida, where else could you have gone? And Philip Beale basically told him that he could have gone anywhere in the Gulf of Mexico, which basically means that Philip Beale could have landed his boat anywhere in Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, or Florida.
So he could have landed in Cancun?
Yeah, he could have landed in Cancun.
They've got great resorts there.
Well, not then, they didn't.
Oh.
Well, I don't know what the Mayan might have built at that time, but okay. Well, Rick also asked him about Guatemala. Could he have landed in Guatemala? The answer was yes. So, this is for full disclosure, because Heartlanders want to say, well, he went to Florida, and I believe he went to Florida.
I do too.
But there are some people that could push the question, push the issue, and say, well, he could have gone to Guatemala. Okay. Now, when it comes to Florida, there's something in the archaeological record called the Deptford culture. And this right here is just a screenshot from Wikipedia. And you can see that the Deptford culture was in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, okay? And it began around 800 BCE. It flourished. The Deptford culture appeared in Florida around 500 BCE. And it later evolved into the Swift Creek and Santa Rosa Swift Creek cultures around 200 CE. And over here, under the map, it says at maximum extent 500 BC to 200 CE. So the prominent time of the Deptford culture was 500 BC to 200 CE.
And so that could have fit that Lehi's family landed when they landed, and
absolutely. I think it's very well within the means of reasonable thought to say that they landed in here and they were part of this Deptford culture, even though they say it began at 800 BCE. Perhaps that there were other people living in the land at the time. We don't really know. So maybe Lehi landed into a place that was already populated. Maybe he did not, but this is what the archaeological record says. This Swift Creek culture is also part of something else called the Hopewell Interaction Sphere. The Hopewell Interaction Sphere thrived around 300 BC up to about 400 AD, and then they fell off the face of the earth, and that's according to the archaeological record. That's what most archaeologists teach about the Hopewell people.
And the Hopewell people were the mound builders.
That is correct. They were known as the mound builders.
And throughout the Book of Mormon, we find that those people were mound builders.
Captain Moroni was a primary mound builder. That's what he was known for, is for building mounds. So in reality, the $1 million question is really this. Were the Hopewell, the Nephites,